Okay, let's do some Java experimentation with the for loop. So here's our problem. We're designing a program using a flowchart to prompt the user to enter 5 integer values. For each value, print a message saying if the integer is even or odd. We use the modulus function to do that. Draw a loop using the elongated hexagon shape. We've already done that, and here's the flowchart that we did. So now we're going to implement this in Java. And we're going to do that using Visual Studio Code. So here's Visual Studio Code. So first thing I want to do is I want to open a folder for my project, and then I want to create a Java file. So we're going to open a folder. I'm going to come into my project for my class, create a new folder, and we're going to call this for loop. And then we'll open that folder. Okay. Now inside my for loop folder, I can go ahead and create a new file using the new file icon. So let's call this EvenOdd.java. Okay. Now we see down at the bottom, Java is activating. I'm going to let it do that. Once Java fully activates, then I'll get some of the quick fix and some of the helpful context. So I let that run. So, okay, so I think we're ready to go. First thing I need to do is declare the class. Public class, and the class name needs to be the same as the file name. So EvenOdd.java, EvenOdd using the upper camel case. Next, I need my main. So now when I start typing, I get some helpful text, so I can just use the shortcut there. I'm going to need a scanner, so let's go ahead and declare the scanner. We're going to declare a variable of type scanner. It's going to be called SC. It's going to equal a new scanner using system.in so that we can read from the console. Notice I'm getting red underscores. This means that the scanner is not defined, so I need to do the import, which I can do using the quick fix. Okay, so the scanner's in. So if we go back to our for loop, we see that we need, we're going to define the for loop. We're going to go from 1 to 5. We're going to do the display, then an input. We're going to do a decision, and then an output, and we're calculating the running total. Okay. All right, so here we go. For loop. Now remember, for loop has three things you need to define it. You need to initialize your variable, you need to put your condition, and you need to put your incrementer. So we're going to say, I have an integer called count. We're going to start at 1. We're going to separate the statements by a semicolon. I'm getting a red underscore there, but don't worry about that because that will resolve itself once we're done typing. Next is my condition, count less than or equal to 5. So in this case, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and use a different condition, but this is what we're going to do. We can't use count. We need to use counter just for simplicity, counter less than or equal to 5. And then we'll say, and then we're going to say counter plus plus. Okay. No semicolon at the end. And then I do that. Now it's important to note that if I put the semicolon here at the end of the for loop, that means that's the end of the for loop. Then this block that I'm writing is not actually part of the for loop. Okay, so you want to make sure there's no semicolon here after the definition of the for loop. You do have the 2 semicolons separating the three definition statements. The initialization, the decision, and the incrementer are separated by semicolons, but you want to make sure that there are no other semicolons in the for loop. Now we're going to do some output. So I'm going to say system.out.println. We're going to say, please enter an integer. Then we'll do some input. We'll say int number equals integer.parseInt. Now the book shows the next int options on the scanner, but which does work. But if you're doing, as the programs get more complex and we're doing multiple types of entry and different data types, then that begins to break down and cause problems. So I always like to do the parse. We're going to do scanner dot next line. Now, it's also important to note that if we enter something that's not an integer, we'll get a runtime error. And we're going to learn about input validation in a later chapter. But for now, we're just going to not have bad input. But long term, we're going to want to always make sure that we protect our program from bad input from the user. Okay. So now we have the parse, and so now we're going to do the test. So we have an if statement. If number, and we're doing the modulus function. The modulus calculates the remainder of a division statement. So we say modulus 2. This says number divided by 2, and then we get the result. So if this is equal to 1 or is equal to 0, then we know that the number is even. If it's equal to 1, we know that the number is odd. So there are only two outcomes, 0 and 1. So we don't need a lot of extra calculation here. So we're going to say if it's equal to 0, then we're going to say, then we know that our number is odd. So we're going to say system.out.println. And we're going to say, we'll go ahead and concatenate the number. We'll say number concatenate is even. Okay. Else, we don't need another condition there. We're just going to say number is odd. Okay. And I just cut and paste that and change the line because it just saved me some time, some typing. Okay, so now we're done. So we also did the running totals. Now we can say total plus equal number. Total is undefined, so let's come back up here to the, we have to make sure that because we're using a running total, we want to use this variable outside the for loop. We need to make sure we define it outside the for loop. So we're going to say int total equals 0. So here we can do, this is a shortcut for saying total equals total plus number. So I could write this as saying total equals total plus number. I could write it like that. This is the same as writing it to say total plus equals number. That's just a shortcut for me to be able to do that summation, called aggregation sometimes in this type of code. Okay, now my for loop is over. I'll have written that 5 times. I'm making sure I'm going to add statements here outside the block. So we see that the block here is lined up. But this is my closing block for the for loop. So I want to make sure I put my ending statements outside that block. We're going to say, let's go ahead and do system.out.println. And so I'm going to do, let's skip a line here. We can use the new line symbol. So this will just skip a line on the console. And then we can say the total of the numbers, oops, is, and we'll concatenate total. Okay. And then that's it. So then we can just say, thank you for using my program. Okay, let's run this and see if it works. Please enter an integer. We're going to enter 10. That should be even. Please enter an integer. Let's do a 9. That's odd. We can do 109. That should also be odd. That's 5. Okay, the total of numbers is 428. Let's add this a little bit to say, let's go ahead and put the counter. So that solves our problem, right? So that does what we wanted it to do. But let's clean up the output a little bit. So this is a little bit, it's a little bit all crushed together. You know, you can't really see what's going on here. So let's put a blank space before the prompt here. So right here on please enter an integer, I'm just going to put a new line character. That's the escape end. So this means that I'm going to get a new line when I do that. So then there'll be a blank line in between each of these blocks. So we see here, we'll have a blank space in between each of those so that we can kind of see, they'll stand out a little better. Okay, let's also just say, let's go ahead and put a counter here. So we know we're doing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you don't really have any context here for how many times for which number you've entered. So let's number each one of these. So this will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before the prompt. So we'll do that by saying the new line, and then we'll go ahead and put count. we'll just parse that in, and let's do period and space. So that's going to look like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's counter that we used. Okay. Let's run that and see what it looks like. So see here, we got a space, we got the counter, 1, 2, works with negative numbers. Okay, 1,351. Let's put a new line there at the end, just so that straightens it. It gets a little blank space at the end of, so right here, so all of our console output stands out from the prompts a little bit. Let's do this. Let's say instead of saying 5 times, let's declare a constant, so we can let's do the to figure out. So instead of hard coding 5 here, let's just say let's declare a. We can declare a variable, a constant. Let's say final int max. Let's call it max times equals 5. Okay, and then instead of going to max time, instead of hard coding 5 here, we'll say max times. And then what we can also do down here is we can also calculate the average. So we can say here, we can say we want to calculate the average, so we can say int average, well, it'll be a double. Double average equals total divided by max times. Okay. And then we can go ahead and line line here. So the average of the numbers is average. And we can say also here, you entered max times numbers. So we'll say you entered 5 numbers. Okay. We don't need all these extra new lines, so let's get rid of those. We'll just want a new line right at the beginning and the end. Okay. Let's run that and see what it looks like. Please enter an integer, 30, 108, 76, 1007, minus 18. You entered 5 numbers. The total is 1,203. The average is 240. Now we know this is not right. That doesn't look right. So 1203 divided by 5 is actually 240.6. So we're losing the decimal precision there. We're losing that because our math here is all being done with integers. So total is an integer and max times is an integer. So we are losing when we divide an integer by an integer, Java is going to round and give you an integer. So even though we want a double here, because all of the variables on the right side of our assignment statement on line 18 are integers, so we're not getting the math we want. So we need to make one of these a double. Okay, we can do that in 2 ways. One is we could do an inline cast here, or we could just change the data type. So I could just change the data type of total to be a double. The other thing I could do is I could just cast it right here. So if I just say treat total as a double, then when I run this, we should get a better number. So let's see. So we can enter 123, 345, 276, 1009, 1009. Okay. Now see, now we're getting our decimal precision. That's what we wanted there. And we did that because we converted one of the variables here to be a double. So now we have a double divided by an integer. Java is going to return a double value. Let's do some little formatting here as well. So I really would like, for here where it says 2762 at the bottom, I would like there to be a comma in here, like the thousand separator. So to do some formatting, we can use a special type of a print statement using printf. This stands for formatted print. And so now what I can do is this has a special format Okay, let's see, I'm not going to do it there. I want to do it on this line. Okay, so print F here. The total of the numbers is total. And so what I can do here is I can, because I'm using printf, instead of doing a concatenation here, I can use a replacement code. So the replacement code is going to like this. It's going to be percent comma 0.2. Let's see, percent comma 0.0. Um, 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 N. No, it's not an N. It's a D for an integer value. Okay. So what's going to happen here is now I'm going to replace this with total. It's going to say, I'm going to give you a numeric value, a digit. I would use an F for if it was floating point or double. So here I'm going to use a D for a digit. And I'm going to say use the comma separator and give me no decimal precision. Okay, and so now I can and then I can say, instead of doing total as concatenation, I do it as a statement at the end like this. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. You need a new line there because the printf doesn't have a new line. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. We'll go into the printf when we get into a later chapter on string formatting. But this is a nice approach. Let's see. So hopefully I did that right. Let's run it and see if I did that right. 109, 345, 3,000. Let's get some big numbers so that we make sure we have. Okay, whoops, I used the wrong number there. See, what's happening here is I got an error that says illegal format precision exception 0. So I can't use the 0 here. Normally I would put like a 2 there, which would mean that I'm going to get a precision of 2 decimal precision. If I want 0, I would just leave it out. So that's my mistake. Let's run this again, just so that we can see what it does. Okay, oops, still doing it wrong there. Let me see. Let's see, I've really messed that up. Hold on just a second. Let me go back and make sure I get that right. Okay, so what have I done here? Oh, you know what I've done is that because total is an integer, there is no decimal precision. So I just need that. So if I want decimal precision, I can do it on the average line here. So let's get this running first. So we want a digit. There's no decimal precision because it's an integer. That's why I'm getting the error. But I do want the thousand separator. So let's see, does that work? So let's see. And then this is also going to be, it's not slash n, it's percent n. Okay, all right. See, this is why we wait until the string formatting session to do this. So let's see, run that. We can say 1,000. We need some big numbers here. Okay, there we go. Now we get the number printed out here with the thousand separators, the integer value. So if we want to do the same on the average, we can convert the printf. The average of the numbers is, and now here we're going to use a percent. We want 1,000 separators. We want 2 decimal positions, and it's going to be a floating point number. So we use the percent means that we're going to have a formatting specification. I want 1,000 separators. I want 2 points of decimal precision, and I'm giving you a floating point number. And then a new line at the end of that. And then the replacement value is average, like that. Okay? A semicolon at the end. So now I'll get right here, this number will be entered with, we'll have 1,000 separators and we'll have 2 decimal points of precision. So let's run that and see what happens. It's going to put in some big numbers. Okay, All right, so that's what we want. Okay, all right. So I think that's enough. So this is an example of a Java implementation of a for loop. We have the for loop here on line 8 defined with the initialization, the test, and the incrementer. Okay, and and inside we're prompting the user to enter an integer. We're then doing a modulus function to determine if the integer is even or odd. We're doing a running total on the numbers, and then we're calculating the average and printing those values out. Okay, all right, that's all for this example.